Thank you. I'm obviously touched. Your words were perfect, each of you. I have a drash to share written on this MacBook. Excuse me. I was remembering back to the very first drash I gave at CBJ, and I remember exactly what I talked about. It was so short and sweet. And I've noticed that I become more comfortable with the idea of being a rabbi. So that's my way of saying, please forgive me, because I have a lot to say. It's going to be a long one. And please forgive me in another way in advance, because what I'm talking about today is the pain of this moment. I'm focusing on the pain on the outside, but I truly believe that the pain inside and the pain outside just mirror each other. The stuff going on in the world is being done by people, and every one of us is carrying this pain inside right now, which produces what goes on the outside, which then in turn produces what goes on the inside. And I'm not just talking about pain, I'm also going to talk about power within us. And my words are going to be very imperfect, so please forgive me. I am going to be teaching as well. Not surprisingly, all three of us went to the same story, so turn to page 827. And take your one of the many things I learned from Rabbi Ezra, have them turn to the page first and take your little bookmark and put it in page 827, because I'll be getting there in a minute. So prior to World War II, Jews were the driving force of Germany's intelligentsia. And just to give you a sense, and this, it doesn't mean anything, but it's just a measure. 25% of the Nobel Prizes awarded to German citizens were given to Jews. It's an astounding number. Of German-speaking Austrians, it was 40%. Imagine if all of that intellectual power had been put to work in support of the German war effort, or in support of any German effort. But in the space between the two world wars, as many of us know, the Germans were disempowered and humiliated. And that's a common human experience, one that individuals can suffer in their private lives, or an entire group or country can suffer collectively. And in the face of humiliation, you have a choice. You can look it in the eye. You can seize whatever power remains to you and overcome your shame, whether it's shame put on from the outside or shame from a failure on the inside. Or you can allow your victimhood to define you and look for others to blame. We know which path the Nazis chose. So I'd like to tell you the story today of a German Jewish woman who never allowed her victimhood to define her. Her name was Trudy Scharf. Trudy had a gift for mathematics and science. She came of age at a time when the doors of the German Academy had just opened to women. And then, as she was on the cusp of earning her doctorate, they slammed shut on her. Not because she was female, but of course because she was Jewish. She slipped through in the nick of time, earning her PhD the same year the Nuremberg laws were passed and escaping Germany. She ran to England, encouraged by a colleague named Maurice Goldhaber, who had fled Germany himself just a year earlier. When she arrived, she discovered that England was already flooded with refugee scientists. She had managed to bring an expensive camera with her from Germany. She sold it and lived on the proceeds for 6 months, subsisting on potatoes to save money. Finally, she got a job translating papers for a Nobel Prize winner at Cambridge University. The work did little to advance her growth or her career, but it paid the rent. Maurice was in Cambridge too, working on his PhD at the Cavendish Lab. He had no idea how to court a woman. Tender expressions of love, not part of his vocabulary, but he could talk physics, and that was a language Trudy understood. They married in 1939 and moved together to Champaign-Urbana, where Maurice had an offer of a professorship. And Trudy? So-called nepotism laws prevented the university from hiring 2 spouses. In fact, if 2 people who were already employed at the university decided to get married, one of them would have to give up her job. There wasn't much else going on in Champaign-Urbana beyond that one university, so Trudy worked as a volunteer in Maurice's lab. She received no pay and very little credit, but she was engaging in research and making real contributions to science. The patterns of human interaction repeat themselves throughout time, with the different players taking different names and costumes. Our Torah portion this morning can be mapped onto Germany of the early 1930s. For the Germans, it was a period of rebuilding after World War I. Both the infrastructure and national pride needed to be recovered. For our ancestors, the Israelites, it was rebuilding after a much deeper suffering of enslavement. We read today about the giant golden menorah that they built for the tabernacle, about the role of the Levites, the trumpets and the Holy Ark that would accompany the Israelites on what should have been a brief journey through the desert. But being in the desert was hard, and the people started moaning. So let's turn now to our books, chapter 11, verse 4. I'll just read it in English. The riffraff in their midst felt a gluttonous craving. And then the Israelites wept and said, "If only we had meat. We remember the fish that we used to eat free in Egypt." Actually, that I'm going to read in Hebrew. Zacharnu et hadaga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Now our gullets are shriveled. There's nothing at all, nothing but this manna to look to. This is the voice of victimhood. Yes, life in the desert was tough. But the text immediately tells us, I'm not going to read on, but it tells us immediately that the manna fell from the sky each morning, and it tasted like rich cream. That's a direct quote. But overwhelmed by their victimhood, the Israelites could not appreciate the gifts they had. Rashi makes this even more pointed. He picks up on that word chinam that I read in Hebrew in verse 5, free. And he points out the Egyptians didn't give their slaves anything for free. So what did our ancestors really mean when they claimed that the food in Egypt was free? Chinam min hamitzvot, Rashi says, free of mitzvot, of mitzvahs. The essence of victimhood is an inability to accept responsibility for your own fate. The world can force incredibly unfair, overwhelming hardships on us. When we accept this truth, and when we recognize that the only thing we truly have control over is our own actions, that's when we shed our victimhood and claim our own power. Because only responsibility can lead to true empowerment. Chinam min hamitzvot. Nope, the Israelites said, we don't want commandments. We do not want mitzvot. We do not want responsibility. That moment of longing to be free of mitzvot, of craving an imagined past of glory days of Egypt, and refusing to see the blessing in the midst of their current hardship, that moment was the beginning of the end for that generation. From here, it continues on to next week's Torah. The rest of this Torah portion is filled with only jealousy and strife. And it continues on to next week's Torah portion, where the Israelites have the ultimate failure of confidence and are condemned to wander for 40 years in the desert until that generation is gone and a new generation is willing to step up, ready to claim their own power. I'm sure many of you have seen my invitation to read the book In This Place Together. I consider this invitation my parting gift to our community. Sheila Zellinger and I will be leading a discussion about the book next Shabbat. It gives a taste of what can happen if both sides of a conflict are willing to accept their share of responsibility and empower themselves to change the narrative. And I have to say, at this moment, with missiles falling on Tel Aviv, that hope feels very far off, as it sure must have felt for our ancestors through 40 years of wandering, as it surely felt for Trudy Scharf Goldhaber, with opportunity after opportunity denied her. But patterns change when enough people are willing to step into their true power. Trudy knew how to work with whatever bits of power she was given, how to amplify and grow them for the purpose of doing good in this world. In time, she and Maurice moved to Brookhaven National Laboratory. She never caught up with Maurice if a person's value is measured by external status. He ultimately became the head of all Brookhaven. He was decorated with every prestigious award short of the Nobel Prize. She became a full research scientist, running her own lab within Brookhaven and making essential contributions to nuclear physics. And she became a strong advocate for women in science. Her most prestigious award is not something she won for herself, but something she enabled for others to win. Donated in her honor, the Gertrude Scharf Goldhaber Award is offered every year to an outstanding woman graduate student at Brookhaven. Now, Trudy's parents never made it out of Germany. Most of her and Maurice's immediate family did manage to escape. Maurice's younger brother, Gerson Goldhaber, went on to become a celebrated physicist too. And he also married an accomplished physicist, Shulamit Goldhaber. Both of Trudy and Maurice's children, Fred of blessed memory and Michael, became physicists. Fred's son, David Goldhaber Gordon, became a physicist, and as I'm sure many of you have figured out by now, my husband. And now our son, Zeb Goldhaber Gordon, is starting graduate school in applied physics this fall. God willing, Zeb will be the 8th Goldhaber to earn a PhD in physics, spanning 4 generations. Now, when David was applying for faculty positions 24 years ago, he received several offers, one from Champaign-Urbana. I was a graduate student in biochemistry at the time, and it turns out the university now has a spousal hiring program to help attract talent to their remote campus. Had we decided to go to Urbana, I would have had my choice of positions in their biology department, paid in part by the spousal hiring fund. This was the best comeuppance, not retribution, but genuine positive change. Today, David runs a lab at Stanford that employs 14 talented young physicists. Their future careers are dependent on him, and he depends on our government to fund his lab. Now, David can trace his ability to run his lab and to educate future scientists directly to the time period when Trudy and Maurice and a flood of Jewish talent all arrived in this country. It was about that time that Vannevar Bush, previously the science advisor to FDR, turned a report he had written for the president into a book entitled Science, the Endless Frontier. Bush made the case that investing in basic research would yield enormous benefits that no one could yet predict. Truman and Congress were impressed because everyone knew that the inventions of radar and the atomic bomb had been crucial to the Allied victory, and that neither would have been possible without basic science. And so began a decades-long commitment to science funding that has made America the world's leader in science and technology. But the funding spigot has been slowly closing over the past 15 years. And then this year, it has been cranked half shut. And in response to the sudden withdrawal of research funds, European universities have begun recruiting American talent, and they are flooded with interested applicants. Now, given my family's personal stake in the matter and the history of David's grandparents, it is hard for me not to draw parallels to the 1930s, to the Cultural Revolution, to other fascist regimes that targeted academics. But I don't want to overstate this case. It is true that government actions today are driving an exodus of American scientists. But so far, the scale of that exodus is small. And much more importantly, withdrawal of funding is not an act of hate. The government is not imprisoning scientists simply for being scientists. And reasonable, ethical people are arguing in favor of funding cuts. Our government is imprisoning another group unjustly. And again, there's so much space for debate and discussion here. And reasonable, ethical people have argued that we need a more firm approach to immigration enforcement. But the brutality of the current crackdown, and in many cases, the complete lack of due process, that's just hateful. And in the resulting maelstrom of anger and hatred, of course, we Jews get targeted from all sides. Does anyone here know about the Great Replacement theory? Some of you do. It's a conspiracy theory that Jews are plotting to bring immigrants of color to the US in order to overwhelm the white majority. It is spoken of openly now on some very influential right-wing broadcasts. The Tree of Life shooter was spewing that nonsense. Equally commonplace on the left is the depiction of Jews as genocidal barbarians. Words turned to deadly violence twice just this month, with the shooting of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky of blessed memory, and the attack on the Run for Their Lives rally in Boulder. So the right is unsafe and the left is unsafe, and it can be tempting to just give up and stay home, pull in the flanks, round the wagons, stay tightly in our safe groups. But I do not want to let them disempower us. Many of you may have heard of Manny's Cafe. It's a Jewish-owned community hub in San Francisco that periodically gets vandalized. It happened again this week. Windows broken, death to Israel and other hateful words painted on the walls. It happened during the zeal of a pro-immigration protest, a protest of the type that Manny, who considers himself a progressive, often participates in. And from what I've read about Manny, I do not believe that this experience will keep him away from future protests. Today is a big day of protests across our country. Our own Nancy Nagel is a lead organizer for the one in Palo Alto this afternoon, which I expect will be huge, but much more tame than San Francisco. And David Goldhaber-Gorton plans to grab a bite of Dottie's wonderful lunch and then quickly head over there. Our strength as a community lies in our political diversity. Many of us completely disagree with the framing of today's protests. Then find other ways to get involved. Join one of the several Run for Their Lives rallies near us, or do something apolitical. People are hungry. We had 2 groups from CBJ volunteer at Second Harvest over the past 2 weeks as part of my farewell activities. We need someone to step up and keep that going. Our Am Yisrael and our social justice groups are building bridges with neighboring communities. Join their efforts. There are countless ways to get involved here and in the broader community. Because when our people are in trouble, that is the time to find our power. So I hope you all know by now that every sermon I write is deeply personal. I always speak about what I most need to hear, believing that if I need to hear it, surely others do too. And many of you have asked me, why am I leaving? Where am I going? Some of you asked me, am I retiring? No, quite the opposite. I don't know yet what my next move is. In fact, it took a lot of courage to step out into the unknown. And I love this community. I love my colleagues. I believe in you. I've learned and grown an enormous amount in my 10 years serving you. And I was reaching the end of my space of growth. It was time for me to step into my own power. A community as strong and loving and good as you are deserves professional leadership that's equally so. And you have that. I know, because I have been a student of each of my CBJ colleagues. Some have moved on to other positions, but our professional staff has amazingly low turnover, and they are here for you. Beginning with my mentor, Rabbi Ezra. When I first came to CBJ, I was a 2-year-old rabbi who knew almost nothing about serving a synagogue. All new rabbis should be as blessed as I was, to find a mentor with such a wealth of wisdom to impart, who believes in them as he believed in me, who gives them the space they need to grow. I wrote a list of just some of the lasting lessons Rabbi Ezra taught me. They're small things, they're what came to mind. The importance of showing up, that small gestures matter, and that small-minded criticisms do not. How to look someone in the eye and give them the truth they need to hear, and how to be compassionate with myself. Bill taught me what it means to truly love your community. We learn in this week's Torah portion that Moses was an ish anav, a humble man. Bill is a student of Moses. Never seeking glory, he gives unendingly of himself, motivated only by love. Bill taught me to hold things loosely when needed, without ever letting go of the essence. He showed me how to meet kids where they are at, and he showed me true delight in Torah Lishma, learning for its own sake. Bill's the only member of our clergy team without a formal title. He doesn't fool me. I know a rabbi when I see one. Cantor Barbara is also a student of Moses. Often working quietly behind the scenes, she is a nurturer. She is consistent and strong, and in times of weakness, we lean on her. I lean on her. Our cantor has shown me how to prioritize the needs of the community. She taught me how to seek out knowledge wherever it is offered. She taught me how to hold good humor and a gentle touch, even in the face of another's unkindness. She taught me to be forgiving. Natalia, left the room, is our third student of Moses. She too gives of herself unendingly to this community out of pure loyalty and love. It was Natalia who first showed me the CBJ way of seeing each child as a whole human and accepting them and loving them as they are. She taught me how to engage young children through art. She taught me about dignity in the face of unfairness. She showed me true generosity. The newest member of our professional staff is Jenny Clancy. Some of you met her today for the first time. I am unendingly grateful to have had a year to work beside her. The religious school is my baby, and I am feeling confident handing it over to her experienced, loving hands. Among the many things I learned from Jenny just in this 1 year is how to take tefillah to the next level of both fun and meaning for our students. She showed me how to take big bumps in stride, to keep things in perspective, and to hold on to what matters most. And she too truly gets the CBJ way of seeing not just every child, but every person as they are, accepting them where they're at. I've learned a great deal from our support staff, watching how they excel in their domains, borrowing from theirs to take into mine. The thing about having such a large, talented professional staff and such engaged volunteers, we generate a lot of ideas, and then the office staff has to make it all actually happen. Laura does everything with warmth and kindness. She takes great joy in creating beauty on the screen. Andrew makes us all smile. He is smart as can be and funny and honest and unbelievably generous. Deborah is gentle and thorough and professional and hardworking and kind. We missed her and are so happy to have her back. And out of Deborah's absence came a beautiful baby for the Jewish people and a wonderful new staff member for CBJ. Kelly is creative and fun and wicked competent. Martine is smart and strong and unbelievably creative with his hands and deeply, deeply generous. Dottie is technically not on staff, and yet she may be the most important professional supporting our community. We feel loved by the exquisite food she creates and by the true love that comes with it. And though Sarah is brand new to the staff, I can already see she will be terrific. Above all, I have learned from our community. So many of you have touched me profoundly, personally. It is almost entirely due to you that I have become the rabbi that I am. I suspect most of you don't even know how much you have given me. And to my sorrow, there are too many to name each of you by name. But from the depths of my heart, I thank this community for everything you have taught me. CBJ is a place of strength and values, and I know our community will continue to learn and grow and step into our power at this moment of need and beyond. Shabbat Shalom.